Dr. Emma Harrison was staring at her coffee cup when humanity's first real evidence of alien life arrived. The bitter liquid had long gone cold, forgotten during her overnight shift at the expanded SETI array in New Mexico. The signal caught everyone off guard, not because it was alien, but because it was so mundane. Resource Assessment Report 2157, X394, the translation matrix spat out. After 3 days of intense computing. Sol System, Primitive Development Zone, Category 3 Civilization. Notable resources. Limited. Recommendation. Standard monitoring protocol. Emma couldn't help but laugh at the bureaucratic tone. Humanity's first contact wasn't a greeting or a warning. It was essentially an alien real estate assessment. Within hours of intercepting the signal, Earth's most advanced telescopes picked up an object decelerating at the edge of the solar system. The ship's design defied Earth's physics understanding, its hull seamlessly blending materials that shouldn't be able to exist together. President Miranda called an emergency session of the United Earth Council. Emma found herself pulled from her research position to the Pentagon's Strategic Response Team, her background in game theory and xenolinguistics, suddenly the most valuable skill set on Earth. They think we're primitive, she told the assembled leaders, her voice steady, despite the weight of the moment. That gives us an advantage. They're coming in overconfident. The alien ship, a sleek vessel that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, took up position in high Earth orbit. Their first transmission was as bureaucratic as their report. Attention developing species. This is High Commander Zixtal of the Galactic Council Survey Fleet. Prepare for standard first contact protocols. What they didn't expect was Earth's response. Instead of panicked confusion or primitive awe, they received a professional reply in their own communication format. Complete with the proper diplomatic signatures they thought a primitive world couldn't possibly know. All thanks to Emma's team analyzing the metadata in their first signal. High Commander Zixtal's holographic form appeared in the United Earth Council chamber, his crystalline body structure catching the light in ways that made human eyes struggle to focus. He expected to find scared primitives. Instead, he found a united world government with spacefaring capabilities, already mining their own asteroid belt. Your species shows unexpected organization, Zixtal admitted, his crystalline features shifting in what Emma's team interpreted as confusion. Emma stepped forward, as Earth's chosen representative. We find that survival often depends on exceeding expectations, High Commander. The negotiations that followed became legend in diplomatic circles. Every time Zixtal attempted to impose standard primitive world restrictions, Emma's team had already found precedents in the Council's own laws that protected Earth's rights. When he tried to claim the asteroid belt as unclaimed space, they produced documentation of human mining operations dating back decades. By the end of the 2-week negotiation, Earth had secured not just recognition, but provisional membership in the Galactic Trade Network. Zixtal's final report to the Council carried a very different tone from his first assessment. Sol System exhibits anomalous development patterns. Standard protocols may be insufficient. Recommend increased observation. As the alien ship prepared to depart, Emma received a private message from one of Zixtal's junior officers. In 10,000 years of first contact missions, you're the first species to negotiate trading rights before we offered them. Perhaps we should be the ones learning from you. Emma smiled as she watched the ship depart from the Council chamber's viewport. Earth had just taken its first step onto the galactic stage, and thanks to some intercepted bureaucratic paperwork, they'd done it from a position of strength. The galaxy thought they were getting a simple primitive world. They were about to learn just how wrong that assessment had been. Marcus Chen, former CEO of a failed quantum computing startup, wasn't supposed to be at the Galactic Trade Conference. He'd snuck in as part of the maintenance crew. determined to see alien technology up close. That's why he was the only human who noticed when Chief Engineer Vaxlith accidentally left his holo display active during the lunch break. The schematics for the standard Galactic FTL drive hung in the air, complex but strangely familiar. Marcus snapped pictures with his neural implant, a piece of gray market tech that the aliens hadn't bothered to scan for. By the time Vaxlith returned, the images were already being analyzed by a group of ex-Silicon Valley engineers who'd been meeting in Marcus's garage. "It's like they never heard of optimization algorithms," said Dr. Sarah Wong, former SpaceX lead engineer, as she studied the drive schematics. "Their quantum calculations are running at maybe 40% efficiency." The team worked through the night, fueled by energy drinks and the kind of manic excitement that only comes from knowing you're about to change the world. They'd already developed an AI system for optimizing quantum processes. It had failed spectacularly for its original purpose, but for this. 3 weeks later, at the next trade conference, Vaxlith was explaining how humans would need decades to grasp basic FTL principles when Marcus stepped up to the podium. "We've actually made some improvements," he said, activating his own holo display. The enhanced drive schematics appeared, now overlaid with human modifications. "Our AI systems found a way to increase efficiency by 40% while reducing material costs by 25%. The conference hall erupted in chaos. Alien representatives rushed to contact their governments. Vaxlith's crystalline form turned a shade of purple that the xenobiologists said indicated extreme distress. "Impossible," the chief engineer sputtered. "You're a primitive species. You don't even have universal matter replicators." Marcus smiled. "No, but we have something better. Thousands of years of learning to do more with less. When resources are limited, you get creative." Within hours, the patents were filed through the Galactic Registry. Marcus's team had submitted not just the drive improvements, but 23 other innovations they'd developed while studying the technology. Each one represented a human solution to an alien problem. Simpler, more efficient, and often using principles the Council species had overlooked in their rush toward complexity. The corporate response was immediate. Major galactic companies saw their stock values plummet as human innovations made their premium technologies obsolete. Emergency board meetings were called. By the end of the week, 3 of the largest tech conglomerates in the galaxy had opened offices in Silicon Valley. "Your species has an unusual way of thinking," the CEO of Galactic Dynamics told Marcus during a private meeting. "You find solutions that our best engineers miss because they're too simple." Back in his garage, now transformed into a state-of-the-art lab funded by alien venture capital, Marcus looked at his team. "They think it's about the technology," he said, "but it's really about perspective. They've had it easy for too long. We're hungry, we're creative, and we're just getting started." As news of the human innovation spread, more alien companies began relocating their R&D divisions to Earth. The planet that had been dismissed as a primitive backwater was quickly becoming the galaxy's hot new tech hub. Dr. Emma Harrison, watching from her diplomatic post, sent Marcus a message. "Keep pushing. While they're trying to figure out how we did this, we're already working on what's next." The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous innovation isn't the technology itself. It's the way you think about using it. Colonel Jack Stewart had spent 20 years studying Army ants before joining the Marine Corps. Now, watching the holographic display of the swarm collective's attack patterns, he saw the same behaviors he documented in the Amazon rainforest. "They're not just acting like insects," he told the emergency session of Earth's Defense Council. "They're following the exact same raid patterns as Army ants, and that means we know how to beat them." The swarm had already overwhelmed 3 outer rim colonies. The Galactic Council's response was to form a committee to study possible responses. Meanwhile, The swarm's bioships were advancing through sector after sector, stripping each world of resources and adding the biomass to their fleet. Standard military doctrine won't work, Stewart continued, his holographic pointer highlighting movement patterns. But we're not going to use standard doctrine. We're going to fight like the creatures that have been successfully resisting swarm species for millions of years. His plan was considered insane by traditional military standards. Instead of maintaining large defense fleets, he proposed breaking their forces into small, highly mobile units. Each group would be armed with modified mining charges, redesigned using the new human-enhanced tech to create targeted electromagnetic pulses that could disrupt the swarm's collective consciousness. Ants don't fight other ants head-on, Stewart explained. They use chemical warfare, they disrupt communications, they attack supply lines. We do the same thing, just on a galactic scale. The Council dismissed his strategy as primitive, but when the swarm approached the human colony of New Darwin, Earth's military command gave Stewart 3 modified mining ships and permission to try his theory. The Battle of New Darwin changed everything. Stewart's ships, using retrofitted stealth tech from Earth's old submarine warfare days, slipped past the swarm's main force. While the massive bioships moved in their predictable patterns, the human vessels released clouds of nanites programmed to disrupt the swarm's chemical communication networks. The results were spectacular. Without their hive mind coordination, individual swarm ships began acting erratically. Some fired on their own forces, others retreated in confusion. Stewart's teams picked them off one by one, using tactics developed by studying how ant colonies collapsed when their chemical trails were disrupted. Your strategy is unorthodox, the Galactic Council's military advisor told Stewart after the 3rd successful defense. But the results are undeniable. Within weeks, other colonies were requesting Earth's help. Stewart found himself training a mixed force of human and alien crews in what the media called the Ant Doctrine. His briefings including everything from ancient Earth military history to basic entomology. The key, he told his students, is understanding that we're not just fighting ships. We're fighting biology. And Earth has been in an arms race with insect swarms since before we walked upright. The turning point came at the Battle of Proxima Beta, a massive swarm fleet attempting to push toward the core worlds, found itself facing a coalition force using Stewart's tactics. The resulting victory was so complete that the Galactic Council was forced to officially recognize Earth's military leadership. Back on Earth, Dr. Emma Harrison watched the victory celebrations with a knowing smile. First, we showed them how to think, she told Marcus Chen during an encrypted call. Now we're showing them how to fight. And this is just the beginning. In his command ship, Stewart was already planning the next phase. The swarm thought they were the ultimate evolution of collective warfare. They were about to learn that Earth had been preparing for this fight for millions of years. They just didn't know it yet. Dr. Emma Harrison stood before the holographic map of known space, watching the tiny points of light that represented Earth's growing network of allies. Each light was a world that had been dismissed by the Galactic Council as primitive or underdeveloped. Together, they were about to change the balance of power forever. The Council thinks this is about politics, she told her team in the United Earth Embassy on Centauri Prime. They don't understand that we're fighting this war with stories. The latest human entertainment package had just been released to the Galactic Network. Hidden within the stream of movies, games, and music were messages of unity and resistance, carefully crafted to resonate with species who had been pushed to the margins of galactic society. A holographic message appeared above her desk. The ambassador from the Crimson Nebula worlds, a species of silicon-based life forms that had been denied full council rights for millennia. Your ancient Earth film, Spartacus, has caused quite a stir among my people. The ambassador's crystal form sparkled. Perhaps we could discuss. similar historical parallels. Emma smiled. The revolution was spreading through cinema and song, just as she planned. While the council worried about military buildups and economic sanctions, Earth's real weapon was already past their defenses: culture. In the entertainment districts of the galactic core, alien youth were already adopting human fashion and slang. Underground clubs pulsed with Earth music, their patrons moving to rhythms that the Council's Cultural Advisory Board had dismissed as primitive noise. They're called rebellion raves, Agent Maya Rodriguez, Earth's cultural attaché, reported. The kids are using human dance moves to express dissent. Last night's party on Rigel IV had 10,000 attendees, including 3 council members' children. The council's attempt to ban human entertainment as destabilizing propaganda backfired spectacularly. Within days, bootleg copies of Earth's entire media library were circulating through the galaxy. Alien philosophers began quoting human rights declarations in academic papers. Underground news networks, modeled after Earth's free press, sprang up on dozens of worlds. Your species has an unusual weapon, the Arcturus representative told Emma during a secret meeting. You make others want to be like you, not through force, but through. What do you call it? Soft power, Emma replied. The ability to attract and co-opt, rather than coerce. The breakthrough came when a group of young council species members, inspired by human democratic ideals, began demanding elections in their own systems. The council's attempts to suppress these movements only led to more aliens discovering human concepts like civil disobedience and peaceful protest. Colonel Stewart, watching from his command post during a break in the swarm war, sent Emma a message. While I'm fighting with ships, you're winning with songs. Remind me never to underestimate a good story. Marcus Chen added his own update from Earth's new technology hub. The kids in my lab are teaching alien interns about Earth memes. Yesterday, I heard a crystalline being perfect the human eye roll. We're not just sharing technology anymore. We're sharing ways of thinking. Emma's greatest victory came quietly, in a small council chamber. A junior member, speaking against a trade restriction, quoted Thomas Jefferson, "When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty." The quote spread through the galaxy like wildfire, becoming a rally cry for change. We're not just building an alliance, Emma told her team that evening. We're building a community. And that's something the council never saw coming. As she watched another light join the holographic map of allies, Emma thought about how far they'd come. Earth hadn't just joined a galactic community. They were reimagining what that community could be, one story at a time. Dr. James Morrison wasn't supposed to find the pattern. He'd been running quantum simulations in the underground Nevada laboratory for 6 months, trying to understand why alien FTL drives worked better when human music was playing in the engine rooms, a phenomenon the crew had jokingly named the Mozart effect. At 3:47 a.m., after his 7th cup of coffee, he saw it. The quantum fluctuations weren't random. They were following a mathematical sequence that looked suspiciously like the Fibonacci series, but in 11 dimensions. It's like the universe has sheet music, he told his team during the emergency briefing. And we just found the key signature. The discovery spread through Earth's scientific community like wildfire. Dr. Lisa Chen, a professor at MIT, connected the pattern to ancient Buddhist mandalas. Dr. Muhammad al-Rashid at CERN found the same sequence in the decay patterns of exotic particles. Every discovery added another piece to a picture that had been hiding in plain sight. Space-time isn't just a fabric, James explained to the United Earth Science Council. It's a language. And like any language, it has grammar, syntax, and most importantly, it can be rewritten. When the first paper was published on the Galactic Scientific Network, the Council's response was immediate and dismissive. High Scholar Vexthor of the Physics Directorate released a statement. Primitive species often mistake complex natural phenomena for patterns. This is simply another example of human over-imagination. Then James's team released their proof of concept, a device that could create a stable quantum tunnel by speaking the right sequence to spacetime itself. The demonstration was broadcast live across the galaxy. A coffee cup disappeared from James's desk in Nevada and reappeared instantly in Marcus Chen's office in Silicon Valley. The implications are staggering. Marcus messaged Dr. Emma Harrison, "We're not just breaking the rules of physics, we're learning to negotiate with them." The galactic corporate world erupted in chaos. Companies that had spent millennia building FTL infrastructure watched their stock prices plummet as human scientists released paper after paper, each one revealing new applications of the universal code. Colonel Stewart saw the military potential immediately. "If we can rewrite spacetime," he noted in a classified report, "we can finally break the swarm's advantage of numbers. Distance becomes meaningless when you can change the definition of here and there." In his lab, James was already moving beyond simple transportation. His team had found ways to create pocket dimensions for storage, generate shields by locally altering physical constants, and even manipulate time flow in small areas, all by understanding the mathematical poetry that underpinned reality. "Your species has done the impossible," High Scholar Vexthor admitted during an emergency council session. "You haven't just advanced our understanding of physics, you've fundamentally changed our relationship with the universe itself." The council debated for weeks about whether humans could be trusted with this knowledge. Meanwhile, Earth scientists had already published everything in open-access journals, starting a scientific revolution that spread across the galaxy. "The council doesn't understand," James told his team as they watched their discoveries transform the galaxy. "The universal code isn't just about physics, it's about communication. The universe has been trying to talk to us all along. We just had to learn to listen." Back in her diplomatic office, Emma added another note to her growing list of human achievements. "We didn't just change the game. We found out it was a different game all along." The galaxy was about to learn that the most dangerous thing about humans wasn't their technology or their military might. It was their ability to see patterns where everyone else saw chaos. Colonel Jack Stewart stood on the bridge of the EFS Thermopylae, watching the swarm's main fleet through the quantum-enhanced sensors. 1 million bioships, moving in perfect formation, each one a part of the vast hive mind that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. They thought they were about to launch a surprise attack on the core worlds. They were wrong. "All ships, execute Operation Trojan Horse," Stewart broadcasted to the combined human-alien fleet. "Remember your ancient history, people. Sometimes, the best way to win a war is to make your enemy think they've already won." The plan was audacious, combining every major human innovation of the past 5 years. Marcus Chen's optimized FTL drives had been modified using Dr. Morrison's universal code discoveries, creating ships that could dance through space-time like water droplets on a hot skillet. "Quantum signatures confirm," his science officer reported. "The swarm still thinks they're reading our old fleet patterns." Dr. Harrison's cultural integration team really outdid themselves. Even their hive mind believes the propaganda we've been feeding them. The trap was perfect because it played to the swarm's greatest weakness, their absolute certainty in their own superiority. They'd intercepted exactly the information Earth had wanted them to find. Details of a massive fleet gathering to protect the core worlds, all running on standard galactic technology. What they didn't know was that each human ship now carried a piece of Dr. Morrison's universal code technology, modified by Marcus's team, to create localized space-time bubbles. The missiles they'd developed didn't just strike their targets. They temporarily rewrote the laws of physics around them. "First wave, initiate quantum desync," Stewart ordered. Across the battlefield, Human ships began shifting between dimensions, appearing and disappearing like quantum particles. The swarm's hive mind, unable to process the simultaneous existence and non-existence of its targets, began to show signs of strain. The second phase involved technology based on Stewart's original ant studies, but enhanced by their new understanding of universal mathematics. Quantum tunneling nanites, programmed with the same chemical signatures as ant colony suppressants, began disrupting the swarm's neural network. "They're breaking formation," the tactical officer announced. "The hive mind is fragmenting exactly as predicted. Individual ships are reverting to basic survival protocols." That's when they launched the Killing Stroke, a series of space-time modifications that created a cascade of temporal eddies throughout the swarm fleet. Ships found themselves moving through different time streams, unable to coordinate or even perceive each other correctly. Dr. Emma Harrison, watching from the emergency council session, sent a priority message. "The diplomatic course is ready. The moment the swarm shows weakness, half their tributary worlds will declare independence. Your victory here ends more than just a battle." The battle lasted 6 hours, but its effects rippled through both space and time. When it was over, the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known had been reduced to scattered groups of confused bioships, their mighty hive mind shattered by human ingenuity. "Your species," the Galactic Council's Supreme Commander told Stewart afterward, "has achieved in 5 years what we couldn't do in 5 centuries. You haven't just defeated the swarm, you've changed the very nature of warfare." Back on the Thermopyla, Stewart was already writing his report. In the end, he noted, "Our greatest weapon wasn't the technology or the tactics. It was our ability to combine everything we'd learned, science, culture, history, and innovation, into something entirely new. The galaxy would never be the same." The species that had been dismissed as primitive had just demonstrated a level of strategic and scientific mastery that would be studied for generations to come. And this, as everyone was beginning to realize, was only the beginning. Dr. Emma Harrison had seen many historic moments in her diplomatic career, but nothing quite like this. The ancient chamber of the Galactic Council, with its towering crystal spires and millennium-old traditions, was being broadcast live across the galaxy for the first time in its history. "The old ways die hard," she whispered to her assistant as they watched the council members shift uncomfortably in their hereditary seats. "But they do die." The evidence her team had gathered was damning. 5 centuries of corruption, hidden behind the Council's supposed transparency laws, secret deals with the swarm, trading outer rim worlds for protection, financial records that showed how the primitive world classification had been used to strip resources from developing species. "We could have released this through traditional channels," Emma's head of intelligence, Maya Rodriguez, noted, "but sometimes the truth needs an audience." The broadcast was being watched on millions of worlds. In the entertainment districts of the core worlds, massive screens showed the proceedings while crowds gathered below. On the outer rim, species that had never been allowed to witness council sessions saw their oppressors exposed. Marcus Chen's tech team had ensured the broadcast couldn't be blocked or censored, using the new quantum communication networks to bypass traditional control systems. Colonel Stewart's forces stood ready to prevent any military intervention from Council loyalists. "The Council claims to represent all species," Emma addressed the galaxy. "Yet for millennia, they've operated as a closed oligarchy. Today, we propose something revolutionary, actually asking the galaxy what it wants." The call for democratic elections sent shockwaves through the established order. Ancient houses that had held power since the Council's formation found themselves facing something they'd never expected: accountability. Dr. James Morrison's Universal Code technology had made it possible to create an unhackable voting system, one that would allow every sentient being in the galaxy to have a voice. The Council's attempts to dismiss it as primitive democracy failed when their own children started campaign organizations. Your species has a dangerous obsession with change, High Counselor Zixtal complained during a private meeting. Some traditions exist for a reason. Yes, Emma agreed. And some exist because no one was brave enough to question them. The revolution wasn't just political, it was cultural. Alien species began adopting human concepts like term limits, free press, and public debates. The Council's traditional closed-door sessions were replaced by open forums where any citizen could speak. When the first galaxy-wide elections were announced, even the most optimistic observers were stunned by the response. 97% of all known sentient species registered to vote. The Council's emergency session to stop the process was interrupted by their own security forces, who had been inspired by human ideas about the right to self-determination. "We're not just changing who holds power," Emma told her team as they watched the results pour in. "We're changing what power means." The new Galactic Alliance, as it would come to be known, was built on principles that Earth had been developing for centuries: representation, transparency, and the right of all beings to determine their own destiny. As the last of the old council members stepped down, many under investigation for their past actions, Emma received messages from her fellow revolutionaries. Marcus Chen reported that technology sharing had increased 1,000-fold under the new open systems. Colonel Stewart noted that former enemy species were now requesting joint military training. The galaxy was learning what Earth had known all along. True power doesn't come from controlling others, but from empowering them to control their own destiny. 50 years after that first dismissive message was intercepted at a SETI station in New Mexico, Dr. Emma Harrison stood at the podium of the new Galactic Alliance's inaugural session in Dubai. The sprawling complex, built using a combination of human innovation and alien technology, stretched across the desert like a gleaming star fallen to Earth. "We gather here today, not as rulers and subjects," she addressed the assembled representatives from over 10,000 worlds, "but as equals in the greatest experiment the galaxy has ever known." The chamber itself was a testament to how far they'd come. Marcus Chen's team had integrated Dr. Morrison's universal code technology into its very structure, creating spaces that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions to accommodate species that breathed different atmospheres or existed in different physical states. Looking back, she continued, "Our greatest achievement wasn't in our technology or our military victories. It was in proving that progress doesn't have to come at the cost of others' freedom." In the academic quarter, the newly established Galactic University was preparing for its first term. Students from across known space would study everything from Earth history to advanced quantum mathematics. Colonel Stewart had been appointed Dean of Strategic Studies, where he would teach the art of combining ancient wisdom with modern innovation. "The thing about humans," he told his first class, "is that we never stop learning. And now, neither will the galaxy." Dr. James Morrison's universal code research had spawned an entirely new field of study. Teams of scientists from different species working together had already made breakthroughs that would have been impossible under the old system. The universe, they were discovering, had even more secrets to share. Marcus Chen, watching from his position as head of the Alliance's Technology Integration Board, sent a message to Emma. "Remember when they thought we were too primitive to understand FTL drives? Now they're using our software to design their children's schools." The former High Commander Zixtal, now serving as a junior representative from his sector, approached Emma after the session. "I was wrong about your species," he admitted, his crystalline form shifting, in what she now recognized as humility. "We all were. You weren't primitive. You were simply taking a different path to the stars." In orbit above Earth, the Alliance's combined fleet held its first joint exercise. Ships of every design and origin moved in perfect harmony, demonstrating that cooperation was stronger than conformity. The swarm's scattered remnants had been offered a place in the new order, not as conquerors, but as equals. Maya Rodriguez, now running the Alliance's cultural exchange program, had just launched a galaxy-wide arts festival. "We're not just sharing technology anymore," she reported. "We're sharing dreams." As the sun set over Dubai, Emma found a quiet moment to reflect. The message that had started it all was now preserved in the Alliance's Museum of First Contact, a reminder of how far they'd come. Earth had risen from a dismissed backwater to a cornerstone of galactic civilization, not through conquest, but through innovation, cooperation, and an unwavering belief in the potential of all species. "Our next challenge," she told the closing session, "is to remember that power isn't about being the strongest or the most advanced. It's about being wise enough to use our strength to lift others up, rather than hold them down." As the assembly erupted in applause, a young alien student approached the podium. "Is it true," they asked, "that humans once thought they were alone in the universe?" Emma smiled. "We did. And perhaps that's why we worked so hard to make sure that once we found others, no one would ever have to feel alone again." The galaxy had changed, and humanity had changed with it. The stars were no longer just points of light in the night sky. They were beacons of a future where every voice could be heard, every dream could take flight, and every species could reach its full potential.